How many of you live on the eastern half of the United States? Eastern Canada, this involves you too. That's a lot of people, I'm very aware of that. In fact, if you took a line and cut Lake Michigan in half and went straight down almost to where the beginning of the panhandle of Florida starts, the population on this part of the country, the eastern half of the United States, it equals the entire other side of this line. That includes the entire western US and central US. That just goes to show how dense the population is in the eastern US and a big chunk of Canada. In fact, this chart here showing eastern Ontario as well as Quebec shows some of the most dense populations Canada has, and this also wraps around the most eastern parts of the United States. But how many of you are ready or prepared for any sort of major earthquake? I'm sure many people would say yes they are, but are you really? Do you really have what it takes to make it through a situation that is often talked about but never really practiced? Now we're going to look at New York right now, and specifically New York City, because over the last 2 days and even the last week, we've been having seismic events within this area, and after doing some research, you're going to be very surprised on how many fault lines actually run through the heart and the outskirts of New York City alone. We also need to take a look at some severe weather taking place just east and then underneath the Great Lakes, with hurricane force winds in upwards of 84 to 90 miles an hour. I am not kidding, this is pretty serious stuff. My friends, thank you all for being here. We're going to break this all down right here, right now. Let's go. Welcome back, everybody. It is July 23rd, 2022, and very quickly, we're going to go over this weather situation near the Great Lakes right now. And this is actually two separate systems going on. Both are packing a big punch. Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, parts of Ohio, and Michigan. That's where this thing is stationed right now. Take a look at this lightning chart. This basically highlights the most severe areas of where these storms are right now. We got southern Minnesota right here. This is where they were packing those 84-mile-per-hour winds. We're going to take a look at Ventus-Sky as well, but take a look under Lake Michigan as well, Illinois and Indiana, just south of Chicago now, but Chicago very much involved in this situation. I was looking at some webcams of the city, and it's not very pretty. Some very severe storms have passed through this area. They're going to continue moving west to east through northern Indiana, and then we have this bowing effect over Ohio right now. You can kind of see where my mouse is right now. Picture almost an arc going down through northern Kentucky, and then all the way up through even Detroit is involved in this. But right now, Ohio, southeastern Ohio, getting the brunt of these storms. Moving over to Ventus-Sky, we're getting wind gusts of over 80 miles per hour. These are actually expected to rise as this storm slips over northeastern Iowa. Right about this area here, we're going to start seeing winds of upwards of 90 miles an hour. That's insane. Now, for the most part, this is going to be the front edge of that storm as they're making their way across underneath the Great Lakes. And then some of these storm cells that are in Indiana as we speak are reaching upwards of 60, 65 miles an hour within some of these areas. A very strong set of storms. Now, there are tornado risks within these areas. A lot of these are straight line winds. And this entire system as a whole, even though it looks like three separate parts, is expected to swing down and then up into the northeast. Underneath all this is a giant heat wave. I will show you that in just a second, but you can see here the two bulk areas of these systems, one over Minnesota moving in this direction over here, and then the one we just looked at underneath Lake Michigan swinging over towards the northeast of the United States later on today. Now take a look at this giant heat wave in the heart of the United States. As you can see, about 3/4 of Iowa is within that heat wave, and just that top half right there is getting slammed with these storms. All this pinkish and purple color here are the severe weather threats, and then those little oranges in there are super severe storms. That's where we're getting those 85 to 90 mile an hour winds. Swinging down underneath Lake Michigan, you can see the purple here, and then that orange color, a little bit different than the heat wave color. Those are also very severe threats. So those highlights of strong winds are where you're seeing these little pockets right here. And this is all riding on that northern edge of the heat wave that's stretching down all the way to Louisiana, Mississippi. I guarantee this part of Alabama is part of it too. We do have a Gulf flow coming up in this direction towards the northeast. That's why you're going to see this system right here kind of bow off in this direction and then get shot up into the most northeastern part of the United States, parts of Ontario. Basically anything you see in the yellow here, and then within this area is the most severe of that weather. It's going to be moving in a direction like this and then get swung up from the Gulf flow later on today and tomorrow. Very quickly, if we look at the precipitation over a 3-hour period, we're looking at upwards of 3 inches of rain moving into Minnesota Minnesota. And then once again, underneath Lake Michigan is really going to be getting hit hard. 3 inches, 4 inches of rain in a short period of time. As we move into later parts of the day, right now you can see it start to bow underneath Fort Wayne, moving up towards Cleveland, western PA, and that's when the Northeast is going to have to start watching out for this stuff. A lot of these high rain rates will break up, but the severe storm threat is going to be very much intact. I will continue to monitor all these systems and more than likely put out posts in the community section of the channel, but we're moving right along to the ever-growing earthquake threat in the eastern half of the U.S., but we're going to be checking out New York specifically. Now, we've been talking about the eastern half of the U.S. for quite some time now, so I know it's more than just New York City, but I want to focus on that because of a string of earthquakes that has taken place over the last 2 days, and then even 7 days, we have even more within a very small area. Now, I want to be clear, these aren't the biggest earthquakes, but that's not the point. The point is the uptick of earthquakes in general being measured by sensors, and then analyzing the data, we could see this grouping of earthquakes right here. Now, I want to show you the fault lines that actually run through New York and the surrounding areas. Now, I was aware of these fault lines, but I did not know that there was 9 of them. Take a look at this chart right here. You will also notice that some of these actually are in New Jersey. So we have a fault line right here just along the border. We have one that's strictly on the New Jersey side leading down towards the Statue of Liberty, which is technically in New Jersey, not New York, for those of you that didn't know that. And then take a look at Manhattan. The entire western edge of Manhattan all the way down to Wall Street is one long fault line. That was one of the situations I did not know. And what's interesting about these is when you go on major earthquake sites, they don't even show these fault lines. They just show the major ones like the New Madrid fault line, which is a little bit west into the country. And in researching these fault lines specifically, I came across this article from December 21st of 2020. It's titled, "New York Could Experience a Damaging Earthquake." We spoke about the significance of the eastern half of the United States not being prepared or built correctly for a major earthquake. Now, I'm going to highlight one paragraph here that discusses this exact situation. If a magnitude 5 earthquake happens in California, it's potentially less devastating than a magnitude earthquake in the East Coast. And that's because the geology in the East Coast, the ground is colder, older, and more brittle. So when a seismic wave hits, it rings through the ground like a bell. And those seismic waves can be felt at a greater distance on the East Coast. Very interesting information here. This was evident in August of 2011 when a 5.8 magnitude earthquake struck 90 miles southwest of Washington, D.C. And it was felt all the way in New York City. That earthquake was strong enough to crack the Washington Monument right through the middle. So to tie this all together, when you start seeing equal or almost greater earthquake reports on the eastern half of the United States, specifically over the last 5 to 6 years, and you compare that to the West Coast, it almost looks like it's an even break. But again, picture the West Coast as like a quicksand type of geography. When an earthquake happens, the shaking doesn't resonate as far out as, let's say, the East Coast would. So the effects of a bigger or mid-grade earthquake on the East Coast is going to have a lot more damage and a lot more cause and effect than it would on the West. In a way, we're almost desensitized to earthquake magnitudes because when we see a 5.0 or even a high-grade 4 on the West Coast, that's almost a daily thing. Maybe not quite daily, but you know what I'm saying. But that same magnitude on the eastern half would be a much bigger deal. So long story short, my friends, whenever you see a cluster of earthquakes or earthquake reports within the New York City area, and then we take into account the amount of fault lines that are within New York itself, and then add on the uptick of earthquake activity, this is going to be a specific area we watch very, very closely. Now, this does not mean we're not going to be paying attention to inland areas. Those are just as important. But once again, seeing this grouping of earthquakes over the last 2 to 4 days is very concerning, and I'm sure it will not be the last you hear about this. Before I let you guys go, there are many different earthquake sites out there. This is the USGS. You will rarely see them post about swarms going on in the eastern half of the United States. They only focus on bigger earthquakes. You will see those eastern earthquakes, but it's websites like Volcano Discovery that will give you the honest details about what people are actually feeling on the ground. With that said, my friends, I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch this video. Shout out to Canada. I will keep you updated on both of these situations throughout the day. Questions or concerns, please leave down below, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye. Stop right there, my friends. If you have not already, click that subscribe button, and don't forget to hit the bell icon. Click all, and you will get all notifications from this channel. And trust me, you won't be disappointed.